In this series of Sustainability of Fashion, we'll be exploring fashion's precarious relationship with sustainability and its attempts to address growing concerns surrounding its non-conservational approaches to society and environment. Thank you all for tuning in to the 5th and final episode in our sustainability series. Joining us today we have
Nazina,
Kate,
Samia,
Apranji,
and myself, Ashwini. In this episode, we'll be exploring the final stages of the topic. What is the way forward in terms of sustainability? Do we invest in technology or succumb to minimalism? Finally, we'll discuss whether sustainability is viable or if it's a lost cause. What do you guys think? Where do we go from here to achieve optimal standards of sustainability?
do you know what? I would go one step back and I would actually redefine sustainability. I think that's what we need to do, because at the moment it's the true definition of which we are not fully aware of and we don't fully understand. So I think if we collectively sort of understand what sustainability is, how we are able to achieve it and what measures we use and adopt, then I think that's just the way forward before we actually make any changes to procedures. And then, you know, it kind of paves the way towards a more coherent, a more transparent sort of, you know, future, I guess. I don't know if anyone else kind of agrees, but no. Okay, I'm on my own. Curbing consumption as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Whichever way forward, I think definitely.
Yeah, no, curbing consumption for me is definitely the best in adopting a more sustainable, you know, sort of measure.
Yeah, definitely the biggest thing that can be done.
I think even if you changed little else, if you cut the consumption, you'd probably see a noticeable difference.
Absolutely.
True, it would definitely diminish the problem largely.
Yeah,
and any changes that you did then make
yeah
are going to be much more visible, much more quickly.
Which is actually really interesting, because after this whole time of discussing all this is sort of what we come up to. I mean, that does put things in our hands as consumers almost. That does mean that we are largely responsible. So
yeah, I think so. But I do think then the industries have got to play a part, because they are forcefully marketing at people and promoting things at people and tapping in ways that we don't always immediately recognise to make products appeal.
Yeah.
You know, and not just sort of good products, just really products that we don't need for, you know, a better life, or you know, and all of the sort of the psychology and feelings of self-worth that are attached to you know, products, status, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's all been really heavily endorsed and promoted by not just fashion, like across every industry. Whether you buy the cheap tomatoes or the vine tomatoes, says everything about you at a dinner party and all that rubbish. You know, the industries are responsible for promoting that, and making us tapping into our own sort of insecurities and our own little human traits that we've got that make us want to buy. So I think it's going to have to be a bit of a collective thing. But I suppose ultimately it is in the consumer's hands to kind of think about what they're doing and fight back a little bit.
Have less of a demand.
So would you say that minimalism is sort of synonymous to sustainability? Like minimalism being, well, buying less, buying simple. Would you say that's almost synonymous to sustainability?
Minimal can be complicated. I think it needs to be the product itself and the product manufacture that has to be minimal, not the actual product design.
Just good design actually would eliminate a lot of the problems, like the need to replace things, like in practical terms, maybe not in like psychological terms, but good design would mean we don't have to physically replace things that are broken so often, or that, you know, good design can be just being able to manufacture something much more efficiently because you've actually thought about everything that goes into it, rather than just the product that comes at the end. If you can channel good design in that way, then that also
So
cuts
then,
out a lot.
so then, really, we're looking at the fashion designers, responsibility, I guess, or that phase of actually creating the conception, I guess, of these ideas and where it's born. And actually, if a fashion designer is more sustainably aware in creating, that particular product, then, we're pretty much in good stead towards making a real impact, a real change on that life cycle, throughout the supply chain going forward.
Yeah.
I guess, what I've come to understand actually is that, they're often, when it comes to sustainability, and you look at trends, they're often rooted in technology and technological innovations. And these technological innovations are they're not very accessible by, sort of student designers. So, even when you are a designer and you're studying and you're sort of learning your craft, you're not really fully aware of
The possibilities
of creating
Completely,
sustainably.
yeah. Even just accessing like sustainable fabrics and stuff is quite difficult. It's really hard to find them. And to have to find new fabrics and new sustainable fabrics for every project is not easy.
Can be expensive as well.
Right.
And that's the thing, because it's actually, I mean, from various things that I've been to, various companies that I've met in my job, I know there's a huge amount out there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, outside the industry you're working in, even as a student, that they're not so visible.
No.
And actually also tending to be as a group, probably one of the most sort of like generous and open with like information in terms of like help and things like that. But it's just not, it's just difficult to find.
Yeah. And I think companies leverage off of that, because what they do is they use that as a competitive tool. If it's very difficult to access, then
the price is automatically
exactly. Then the barriers are very high.
Yeah.
Towards actually being sustainable. So what they're turning sustainability into is more of a competitive advantage tool.
Yeah, I think that's definitely
has an ethical implication to it, but
definitely true. And then but also if you've got startup companies, they're just not able to make themselves as readily available. And sometimes the manufacturing process is a bit reliant on early innovation tech. So the actual manufacturing process can be a little bit higher. So it does put it out for now, for the time being, it is still out of the realms of to be used as a standard base, but actually the resources are really out there. I think it's nice because that sort of sustainability is not forcing, but you do find almost a lot more creativity there.
Yeah.
People have to be clever about what they
Right.
utilise,
They
what they're
more.
recycling, what sort of byproducts of other systems, and they're turning it into products. So it's actually, like, in design terms, it's like a really exciting little arena that's going on there. It's just a shame it doesn't get more of the attention it deserves, really.
No, it's true. Well, fostering partnerships is definitely one area that needs to be, explored in much more depth, because if you've got a company that has ample resources and is able to invest in, sort of innovative technological advancements that can sort of push, sustainability, then, partnering them with, a startup or just, another business, sharing that information at least, that's pretty much what the industry needs. Instead, people are just they're doing their own work, their own investigations, their own research, and they're sort of like, keeping it towards themselves. It's like, oh, here are my butter biscuits. I'm not sharing mine with yours.
I think it comes down to, again, like, their only focus is just making money, right? In which case, like, they wouldn't want to share stuff. But if they actually want to grow as a community and really, like, go towards sustainability and do well in other ways as well, apart from economically, then they would be more willing to share.
Well, it's interesting because here we are at a moment in time where we can't muck about anymore. Like, our resources are finite, they are running out. So it literally is do or die. Like, companies really do need to stop thinking about profits and actually think, how am I going to be profitable without there being, an industry existing within the next 10 to 15, 20, 30 years. They need to be very practical about it. The only way they're going to elongate or ensure their survival or their existence in the future is through preservation. And if they're not going to conduct in actions that are going to preserve, their existence now by, the acts of sharing their information to help the rest of the industry, they're not going to be able to survive, because there will be no industry for them to survive in. So it's like they need to wake up. The onus is on them. They need to be very smart with the information, with the resources that they have. And they just need to be able to work, in a collaborative fashion to try and make sure that we all contribute towards the same end goal. Everyone's in the same boat, essentially. So
Well, I think we did sort of discuss this, but can brands be innovative and creative while adopting sustainable practices? I think that comes down to what we discussed about good design and creative design and unique design not necessarily being too crazy and actually being minimalistic in terms of manufacturing and being creative, but also kind of minimalistic and sustainable.
I think a lot of, from what I've seen of what people are producing, companies who are focused on being sustainable, there's a huge amount of creativity. There's stuff you would never have, I would never have thought of, weaving fabric out of grass roots.
Yeah.
A leather substitute made out of the byproducts of orange juice. It's just insane, what people have thought of to do to make new fabrics, or the way products are being put together. So it's all out there. It is just it's just being able to do it on a larger scale. I think, but in some ways, I think there's an idea that being sustainable is somehow limiting.
No.
And actually, I don't think it is at all. I think you just have to be really prepared to think outside the box. And I think for some sectors of the industry, they would really benefit from being sort of compelled to do that, because they haven't. And a lot of what you're seeing in fashion is copied, rehashed, I know there's technically no such thing as a new idea, but there really isn't. There hasn't been for a while. And there are stores up, and companies over the world, and in the UK there's been a few highlighted who are really struggling because, and maybe if they had a bit more creativity and a bit of more point of difference and stop trying to appeal this sort of mass appeal that everyone else is doing. They'd actually have more chance of survival. And also reacting in a way, if consumers are not hitting the high streets and using the internet a bit more, but if consumption has come down a bit, they need to start using that.
Well, consumption actually just puts too much pressure on, on the workers. It puts too much pressure on, employment and working, practices. And that's where you get the abuse of, in various different jurisdictions. So, definitely curbing the sort of, consumption levels will definitely help towards actually being more productive in areas like innovation and creativity, particularly in this area. And also innovation is it's the key to economic progress. And that's what we don't really appreciate fully, particularly in times of crisis. It really is. And that's just something that we can explore a little bit more. But there are brands out there that are incredibly innovative and creative and really do take time to sort of think about what it is that they're doing. And actually, they create this organic growth. I think what's quite interesting is that over the years, you've seen a real obscurity in the cycles of businesses nowadays. before there was this slow trajectory towards growth, and now you're seeing that being completely accelerated to the point where, their trajectory is like, 0.1 of a nanosecond, and then they're completely gone the next. They're there on the public domain, on the public stage. They're experiencing huge success, and then literally within 5 months' time, you don't hear about them again. And so I think what these practices do is they slow growth of businesses, which makes it more organic. And the more organic growth a business experiences, the more longevity they'll have. And I think just generally, as we've discussed, the better their sort of impact is on the rest of society and the environment. I know, for example, and I'd hate to sort of plug AlphaOmega, but what the hell? I'll do it anyway. But, since conception, AlphaOmega has really been based on, this concept of sustainability. And actually, it looks at the design process from a holistic angle. And it focuses more actually on the well-being of its customers. It focuses more on producing products that are really catered towards the individual really placing a lot of value on themselves, on their creative expression. And what that does is it creates a sort of sense of buying where a customer is not really buying for variety. It's not buying one thing in different colors. It's not, it's not cheap. It's not whatever. It's an item that has extreme sort of value, not just from a price perspective, but to how they sort of relate to it, And I think that's also where, a little bit of innovation and creativity can sort of manifest itself, is really how it communicates, how it sort of, how it communicates with the customer, with the consumer, rather than it being just this commodity that has a very sort of shallow intrinsic value and then that's it. If we're able to produce, items that really do resonate with individuals, that actually help create a better sense of well-being, help people to really feel comfortable and confident about and celebrate who they are, then we're creating a sort of different mindset. We're creating a sort of different behavioral pattern. And that's also where designers are really, really useful. And that's the sort of impact that I think designers can have outside the spectrum of maybe the sort of ecological, measures that we've been discussing so far. It all sort of helps towards one particular end, in this whole sort of situation.
So would you, in general, after all of this, would you say that it's truly possible to be fully sustainable, or is it a lost cause? Do we need would government intervention help achieve this, or is that not possible either? What do you think?
Definitely government intervention
is required.
Oh gosh, definitely.
I think it's going to have to be, but you kind of feel like for a massive creative industry with all those, amazing ideas and great designers, it shouldn't need that, really. No. It's a bit of a...
It should be both, really, working together.
True. It's a bit of a shame that fashion couldn't actually do something of its own accord.
Yeah, they need somebody to force them to take the right
because
steps,
really,
right
with
decisions.
all those minds in there, it should have been one industry that found it particularly easy to find ways or alternative methods of doing things and haven't. And I think that's doesn't reflect that well on the industry.
But, again, with what we've said, businesses really do have a primary focus on making a profit, and governments have a responsibility to regulate how businesses make a profit. Yeah. So it is within the government's, sort of remit to really sort of assist in this area, and we can't just place the onus on businesses. We really do have to have at least this top-down approach where it is coming from government legislation, incentivizing businesses, as Simina, you mentioned also before in previous episodes, and really sort of starting that trickle-down process. And then in the meantime, obviously, consumers can really start, showing and wielding their power in numbers and going to retailers, demanding transparency, demanding, to know where their products are coming from. And then once we have, sort of these two opposite angles or two opposite ends of initiatives sort of working, together, then when they join in the middle, then we've got pretty much a solution to the problem, rather than it just sort of being something that happens, simultaneously and expecting, this sort of, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The government could also play a role in making consumers aware of sustainability from an early stage, like incorporating it into the education system somehow.
Big time. Yeah.
I think it is happening, but more would definitely help, the full extent of it, because I think it's very limited right now to just planting trees, walking to school instead of taking the car, but to make them understand that it's more than that. And definitely at things like design schools and fashion universities, at any level of education, I'd say, even on business courses, on MBAs perhaps, anyone who might in the future be responsible for these sort of initiatives.
Yeah.
I think educating them matters.
Yeah.
So.
Do you know what? I've got a new slogan: conscious fashion for the fashion conscious. That's what we should be promoting. That's what we should honestly put on T-shirts, making sure that our T-shirts are made in unsustainable ways. But, that's what we need to do, exactly what you've just mentioned, which is everybody needs to just come together and really make a go at this.
And that, would you guys say, is that possible?
Absolutely. And
we're going to remain optimistic about
No, we have to, because that is the only way we're going to change things. We have to believe it will work. And
we don't have a choice but to change.
We don't, exactly. I mean, look at for those that are listening, go and do some research, look at the figures, really see what sort of world we're going to be looking at in 30 years' time, because change is happening in such an accelerated pace. It's you'll be silly to ignore. So, I think we all have the responsibility of being involved and making, the sort of efforts to really do what we can in this whole effort. But it's not going to be easy, but it will take, a lot for us to achieve.
But in terms of a product being fully sustainable, I think that's really hard to do. I mean, it's possible, but you'd have to put a lot of effort into that, because even recycling can have a downside to it. I'd rather reuse something before it gets recycled because
That's
of
true.
the energy.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
So for something to be fully sustainable is really, really hard, and I think we just need to pay a lot of attention to make sure that
just
happens.
Minimizing it at least and doing whatever we can.
Yeah, minimizing should be easier, but it's not really what we want. We kind of want to. Sometimes there's just an argument that should we even design anymore? Should we stop designing to and use what we already have?
What, and use virtual reality? We're all just naked and we just basically have these these things over our eyes where we, VR screens.
If you want things over your eyes,
It could work, actually. Yeah, virtual reality. That might actually
definitely moving towards technology.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But I'm confused to live your life through this screen.
Right? Yeah. That would be.
You could just be in the Matrix or something. Just everyone goes to sleep. You don't need anything in life. Minimalism at its peak, and you just dream your life away, and then you die.
No more waking up. I don't have to get out my bed. Gosh, that would be amazing. Yeah. Well, if we can have that sort of existence, I'm sure there'll be some sort of impact on our well-being somewhere. But yeah, without being too sort of flippant about it, we're definitely going in the right direction of seeking some sort of change.
I think if we've got the brains to come up with all of this stuff that we have now in the first place, we've probably got the brains enough to fix it if we really want to make the effort and try.
Absolutely. Today I just heard about how dinosaurs were suffering with dandruff. So if we've got technology that can detect, frigging dandruff on a dinosaur, we've got that technology that can stop the waste and stop polluting and killing the planet. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Anyway.
Yeah, we just need to apply our capabilities better.
Exactly, yeah. So I do believe that we all have the ability to make absolute complete change towards sustainable measures and towards a more sustainable consciousness. It's very apparent that collaboration and the sharing of information is key in this process. But listen, thank you all again for listening and for tuning in. And I want to thank also the panel speakers that have been very, wonderful with their comments and their views. And may we continue the protest and continue the discussion. Thanks a lot.